Another OM 442 engine. V8 engine with 128mm pistons. This particular engine is turbocharged. It has 2 turbochargers installed, B-turbo, with a mechanical drive and a fuel pump. There's a teardown of this engine on the channel. I'll leave a link in the description. If you haven't seen it and are interested, you can check it out. I'll start the assembly by installing the oil nozzle. I finished inspecting the teardown, and on the 8th cylinder, the piston was installed incorrectly, upside down. It broke this tube, so now I'm installing another oil nozzle. Next, I'm installing the heat exchanger. I prepared it by washing, cleaning, removing the radiator inside, and flushing and blowing it through. I take a new gasket, apply sealant. The sealant is Corteco. The exchanger is in place. Next, I will replace the camshaft bushings. Okay, the bushing is in place. Let's take a look. Here is one oil channel. Oil comes through it from the crankshaft directly to lubricate the camshaft. And here's the second oil channel. This one goes from the camshaft to lubricate the fuel pump. We can see that both channels are aligned, everything is fine, and so on. The camshaft bushings are in place. And now let's check the oil channels again. We can see they're there. They're there. Well, and I've already checked the first bushing, everything's fine. Now I turn the engine over, pack the piston, and install the guides. The piston is a good brand called Nauro, which I installed on the red one. I've already removed and checked this piston, including its size, but it's not the same piston. So here in the kit there's a pin, circlips, piston rings, and of course the piston and the sleeve. Now I'm going to mark each sleeve. This is my first sleeve and this will be my first piston. Oh, this is so I don't mix up which piston came from which sleeve. This is how it comes packed. The piston is already inserted into the sleeve, already with the piston rings. So we can see the piston right away. It already has the piston rings on it and the piston pin is installed. I'll mark right away what this is. Here I have a second sleeve, a second piston. Now we'll check the weight of the pistons. I weighed the complete pistons, including pins, rings, and rods. The total weight of all the pistons is 3,510 grams.
That means everything is fine.
So, I used the rubber seals for the sleeves as usual. Airlink. Okay, so I measure all the adjustment rings, but I use the standard ones. They should all be 0.15 millimeters, but I'll check anyway. I'll measure all the sleeves and the height of the rim. We see the thickness of the ring is 0.15. So, all my rings are 0.15 millimeters. Now I'll measure the height of the rim. We can see the height of the rim is 0.91, but it can vary from 0.90 to 0.92. Now I'll measure all the cases. Here we can see, on this one it's 0.92. All the cases are between 0.91 and 0.92. So now, without the rubber rings, I'm installing the adjustment rings, and I'm putting in the cases without the rubber rings and measuring the case protrusion. I've installed all the cases, tightening the cases with bolts, and now I'm measuring the case protrusion. We can see on the block here I have 0 in the arrows. It shifted to 8, we have 8.5 hundredths at 8,089. That's the maximum possible protrusion. So checking in 3 planes, 0.8. So we look 0.8, 0.8. That means we can see that 8 hundredths is just the best protrusion. The norm is from 3 hundredths to 9. These two gears checked, now checking the next. Eight. Next, let's look at 0. Here it shows 0 for everyone, 0.7. So let's check the third plane, 0. Well, here it shows about 70707. And so on. Checking all the sleeves, the sleeve protrusion, I checked that all the sleeves protrude about the same. That's around 7 or 8, which is very good. So now I take out the sleeves, put on the rubber rings, and we'll start installing them in place. The seating areas for the rubber rings in this block are in very good condition. I will simply coat the rubber rings with special grease, a special gel. I also coat the sleeve itself with this paste. All the seating areas are coated, all the sleeves are coated, I'm installing them. So the sleeves are in place. Now I'm turning the block over again and we'll install the crankshaft. So here's the crankshaft. The crankshaft, I've prepared it. I've already filmed the footage. Now I'll show the footage of preparing the crankshaft. I clamped the crankshaft in the machine, removed the counterweights and went over it. I polished it a bit. After polishing, I'll check the size. So I take the micrometer, checked it against the template at 0. We see 0.5. Main journal 1.03994. Main journal 103, 99.3. Main journal 103, 98.5. 2. Main journal 103, 99. 1. Main journal 103, 98. I also removed the ring for the oil seal. The ring will be new. I also take the micrometer, check it against the template. We see 4 at 0, connecting rod, let's see, 89, 99. I'm showing the most worn spot on camera, usually up and down, also checking in 2 more planes. The third connecting rod is 89.99. The second connecting rod is 89.98. The first connecting rod is almost 89.99. That is, the crankshaft is in perfect condition. I turned it, measured it a bit, and it's in perfect size. I replaced the washer, the thrust one onto the oil seal. What else did I do? And I blew out all the channels, so the crankshaft is ready. Next, before installing the block, I need to install the tappets first because it will be inconvenient to do it later. I lubricated the hose for the tappets with oil and now I'm installing them. I've washed and cleaned the covers and everything. I also want to show you something from the disassembly process. Here, as I showed, the bearings are in place. That is, all the bearings, not just this thrust one on the 5th main. All the main bearings that are in the covers had these kinds of thrusts. Let me show you here. It says 170298. So, as I said, the engine is from 1998. The rod bearings are now installed. After checking, we discovered that these types of bearings are still in production, contrary to our initial belief. Only original Mercedes parts are available with long wait times and unusual prices. I'm going to install the most ordinary bearings. This is KS for us. The size is standard. So I've tightened the crankshaft, the torque specs, I'm setting them now. Here they are. I tightened the marks across, turned at 90 degrees, and now the marks are along. Alright, so the side rods are tightened too, the main bolts are tightened, everything, the crankshaft is fully tightened. And like this is how it turns for me, that is, it has longitudinal movement. And this is how it spins for me. That is, it's easy. That is, I give it a push and then it keeps going on its own. That is, it's perfect, just as it should be. It feels so smooth, like it's gliding on oil. The oil is holding it from all sides. Nothing is too tight or pinched anywhere, and there are no weak spots. The whole space is filled with oil and your hand, and you can feel all of this perfectly. So next my task is to install the pistons onto the connecting rods and then put the pistons in place. First, I need to put the respirator in place. I also measured it. The cam height and bearing journals are perfect. I lubricated the bushings with oil. Alright, it looks like the timing marks are aligned here on the crankshaft, and here are the 2 marks on the camshaft. This is how they rotate together. You can see the crankshaft made 1 full turn, and the camshaft made half a turn. But as we can see, the crankshaft made another full turn, and the camshaft made another half turn. All the marks on the base lined up. You're with me here. Now I'll move on to the piston assembly. So, continuing with the assembly. Yesterday I went and picked up the connecting rods. I had given them in to have the bushings replaced, so they changed the bushings, machined them on a lathe, and fitted them. So now this is how it looks. So now I'm going to assemble the pistons. Here are the pistons. I kept them in a box so dust and dirt wouldn't get on them. So I took them out yesterday as well. The fuel pump came back from injector repair. The nozzles on the injectors were replaced. Here you can see the old nozzles, and these are the new ones that were installed. The intermediate bus bar, that is, it was replaced due to wear. If you look closely here, you can see the wear where the needle rests, and it's already quite significant wear. Next, here are those injectors. I won't mention the company. Maybe I'll work something out with them about advertising later. But I really like the quality of their work. That is, even the finished injectors are packed and sealed in bags so that no dirt can get in. That's something. I think this shows the level of quality. Usually when you get something from a fuel guy, it's not even sealed. It's all covered in oil, dirt and dust. So this is a whole different level. Yeah, and I can say the same thing about the fuel pump repair. If you remember, it was disassembled down to the housing. I was honestly a bit worried about that. It was on my mind. So they said there's nothing to worry about. They just pushed the plugs in a bit further. Probably used some kind of glue as well, so there shouldn't be any problems. They said they cleaned it all up really well. It's completely clean now. At least I like how it looks on the outside. So the plunger pairs were replaced, the discharge valves were replaced too, all 8 of them, and the springs were replaced as well. Well, they also replaced all sorts of gaskets, the set, regulators and so on, various rings, sealing ones. We can see that everything is marked with paint, so I also like the pump. What condition is it in? Let's see how it will perform in operation, how it will show itself. Now for now I'm removing the fuel equipment and working on the pistons. I installed the pistons, we found them, and I'm installing the pistons into the block. I take the piston, lubricate the connecting rod with oil, and also lubricate the bushing with oil. This way it goes in further just by hand. I put the ring in place, check the second ring, and that's it. One is ready.
Next, we assemble the steel ones. The first one is ready.
So that means the pistons are already installed on the connecting rods. And next I install the bearings. I use either regular bearings or as usual sputter bearings. Yes, maybe even for a turbocharged engine, the bearings should be sputter type.
We can see.
One bearing is regular, while the other has sputter standard inscribed. Use the bearing with the sputter inscription. We install it into the connecting rod. The bearing that is plain, without any inscription, we install into the connecting rod cap. The bearings are installed. Also, I want to mention that it is absolutely necessary. It's necessary to measure the bolts as usual. I've already measured all of them. We can see the height is 68.1, somewhere up to 68.5. You can use the bolts, but the important thing is the connecting rod bolts, so I always pay attention to them. All the pistons are ready for installation, so I'm starting the process. I've tightened the connecting rod bolts. The tightening torques will now appear on the screen. I also tightened the perpendicular and parallel marks. So next I install the counterweights. The counterweights are also washed, cleaned and prepared. The bolts are ready. I'll be installing them and I'll apply thread locker to the threads. Thank you. I've installed and tightened all the counterweights. The torque specs will appear on the screen now. So also a 90-degree turn with the marks aligned. So the crankshaft is fully installed, everything is fully tightened, the main and rod counterweights and the axial play. It turns easily, moves smoothly, and is in good condition. Now I'm closing the rear cover, the front cover, and I also plan to close the oil pan today. So let me tell you a bit about the covers and what was done. The front cover was washed and just cleaned. I ran a tap through the threads, cleaned them out, removed the dirt and replaced the oil seal. The oil seal is good. Without a spring, it's an acrylic type. The front cover is ready for installation. As for the rear cover with the housing, first everything was washed and cleaned, and I ran a tap through the threads. Here we can see that a crack has started. I applied some sealant, but the crack appeared, so it started to chip off. When they last tightened it and removed the oil pan, they used excessive sealant. A bit more force and this tab would have snapped off, but it remained secure. I checked everything with a tap and removed all the dirt and old sealant from there. So, there were good original factory Mercedes studs installed here. But here, there were some strange bolts. It's not clear what was done. I installed good studs and nuts, good ones. I prepared the mounting spot for the starter properly. Everything here was covered in corrosion. I cleaned it up. Next, I also replaced the seal with the same kind, an acrylic rubber one without a spring. That's basically the only type I use. They're the best seals. The compressor was overhauled. Here are the old parts. The cylinder was completely replaced, as well as the piston rings and pin. The bearing was replaced and the crankshaft bushing and inserts were also changed. This is how it appears when assembled, the one installed on the connecting rod. The valves were replaced, and also the valves had been installed incorrectly. Apparently someone had opened it up before as well. Here we can see that the plate and the valve are broken. It's the exhaust valve. There should be a washer here, but it was missing and the plate was just tightened too much. In other words, it was done incorrectly, and that's why it broke. I also replaced 2 studs, made them from good German bolts. I tightened 2 studs, and I've already prepared the cylinder head, but the cylinder head right now, I'm not installing it yet because it'll just get in the way there. I'll put the cylinder head in place later. I also cleaned up all the threads on this side. There was a lot of dirt, old sealant, and so on here. That's how it all is. I briefly explained what was done with the covers and the housings. And now I'm starting the installation. Before installing the housing, we check the marks again. That is, we make sure that there is a dot on the crankshaft and 2 lines on the camshaft. We can see that they are aligned. Now we put on the gaskets. Next, I install the front cover, also applying sealant and putting it in place. So, the oil seal is installed using the guide that comes with the oil seal kit. Remember, the surface where the oil seal sits must not be coated with oil. Some oil seals must never be lubricated with oil under any circumstances. Next, I'll install the flywheel, but lately flywheels have been coming without the thrust washer for some reason. Be careful when unboxing, as the washer may not be included. Install the washer first before proceeding with the installation. Alright, the washer is in place and has already cooled down. The heat immediately went into the flywheel, which means the bearing is also new. I pressed it in. I always install the bearing right away, because lately, for some reason, the flywheels have often been defective. This bearing just slips right through. So as soon as I get a new one without the camera, I immediately press in a new bearing. Check that the flywheel is ready, the bearing is installed, and the washer under the seal is in place. So, I always check right away for the presence of the scale marks, because I once had a case where the flywheel didn't have a scale at all. Now I'm going to install the clutch, and I want to wipe the flywheel with some solvent because there's a bit of grease on it.
Well, I'll clean it off. It's better without it.
Next, I'm installing the clutch. Before installing the disc, let's check it for runout. There's some runout, but within acceptable limits. The main thing is to ensure there's no wobble, so the clutch doesn't drag. The slight movement is normal. I always inspect them prior to installation, and they all have some play like this one. I've checked the disc and am now installing the clutch. I remembered that I have a new primary shaft, so usually I use an alignment tool, but to install it more precisely I'm using the primary shaft itself. Alright, the clutch is in place, the clutch is installed. Next, I'll be closing the oil pan. Now it's time to install the oil pump. The oil pan has been prepped, washed, wiped, blown out and degreased. But first I need to take apart the oil pump. So here I have the oil pump, model 43. It's also a high capacity one, so that's already installed. It looks like it was replaced, you can tell. The company is Paul Bernard. I watched a video about pressure testing cylinder heads. Yes, I showed cylinder heads from the same company in that video, and they've lasted me 2 or 3 years. Micro cracks formed and oil began leaking from cylinder heads made by the same company, in a way. I know that company exists, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I rarely ever see it, so now we'll take the pump apart and check its condition. So we can see that the pump is in good condition. That is, the gears haven't even developed a mirror finish yet, which means it was replaced not that long ago. Alright, we'll leave everything as it is. I'll close the cover back up and install the pump. Alright, so I'm installing the pump and putting in a new pressure relief valve. Now I'm installing the oil pan. I've applied sealant here, applied sealant to the block and to the gasket. Now I'm taking the oil pan and installing it. Alright, well that's it. The oil pan is installed and tightened. This is how my engine looks now. Now I'm going to turn it over and continue the assembly. I brought the cylinder heads, I had them sent for surface grinding, and this is how they look now. So my next task is to pressure test the cylinder heads and check the water jacket for leaks. So now I'm marking them. They're already marked, but I'm just using a marker now for clarity. So I'm testing the 8th cylinder head. So as you can see, I applied pressure for the second time, and now I'm waiting for it to bleed down to at least 2. We can see that it's already bled down to 2, and we can see there are no bubbles or anything, so everything is fine. Now I'm turning the head 90 degrees and checking again. The pressure has decreased to 2 atmospheres and no bubbles are visible. That means I've checked the 8th head and we conclude that it's airtight. Now I'm putting in number 7 and so on. I've checked all 8 of them, everything is fine, they're all airtight, and the water jacket is airtight on all of them. And now, so I don't have to work with these greasy heads. So right now they're all in antifreeze greasy, plus I haven't washed them after grinding. So there are still some shavings, sandpaper and abrasive left somewhere. That's why now I'll put them all in the washer and rinse them again before assembly. I've washed all the heads again, cleaned and prepared the valves, and now my task is to assemble the heads, and wipe them down. Dad, I marked each head while disassembling. For instance, this is the first head, and this is the corresponding first valve. So what am I going to do now? I will check the condition of each seat, look at the condition of the working surface of each valve, and decide which valve I will use. Let's say, for example, 2 cylinders. We see that it has a good shine, no pitting. Here too the seat looks like it's in good condition, no pitting, nothing is damaged, everything is excellent. So I just apply some paste and then lap it a little in place. Seat is here. So let's say the 7th head is in good condition, everything is fine, but the condition of the valves, let's say, is not great. Here you can see the pitting on the 7th valve on the exhaust one, so I will be installing it. I'll clamp the seat in the machine and cut the bevel slightly before lapping it. This is the work I have ahead of me now. Let's get started then. Beginning with the first head, I first do both, make the working bevel a bit narrower. I've made the working bevel narrow, now I'm lapping the valve. So we can see a mat track has formed all around. We can see the seat also a matte even, uniform track all around. That's it, the valve is lapped. We also see a mat ring all around. Damn, let's look at the seat. The whole seat too. We can see that everything is fine. There's a mat ring all around. All the valves are lapped. That's how it laps. All the other valves are lapped as well, so I immediately assemble the head. First I put in the small washers, then I install the valve stem seals. Okay, next I take the large washer. The first head is now fully assembled, cleaned and ready for installation, including the injector. It's all set to go and the process will continue with the remaining heads. I've reached the 7th head, so now I'll show you what I'm going to do with this valve, the one with the pitting. So, on some valves, I remove the chamfer like this, restore the working surface, and then I also use the cutter and lap it in the same way. Alright, all the heads are now completely ready for installation. I've prepared the bolts, washed them, cleaned them as well, and checked everything. Alright, I'm starting to install the heads.